On the first day of school, my husband and I dropped our daughter off at kindergarten. As soon as we got out of the car, the principal warmly approached us. "Harry's dad, the elementary school is next door. Did you get the wrong place?" My smile froze on my face as I turned to look at my husband, who had gone pale. After nearly 10 years of marriage, I had 6 abortions for him. Even Zoe was only kept because the doctor issued an ultimatum, stating my body couldn't withstand another miscarriage. Only then did he reluctantly agree to keep her. I naively thought he was just committed to being child-free, longing for a world of just the two of us. Little did I know, he wasn't against having children, he just didn't want to have children with me. No wonder he leaves 2 hours early every single day for a 20-minute commute. No wonder a substantial sum vanishes from the company's monthly accounts under the guise of charitable donations. All that time that vanished into thin air, all that money whose whereabouts were unknown, it turns out he'd been using it all to support another family. Thinking of this, I slowly spoke up. Could it be that the principal has mistaken someone else for me? He looked as if he'd been granted a pardon, hastily averting his gaze from mine as he bent down to pick up his daughter. Maybe so, with so many parents, it's easy to get them mixed up. "Zoe's first day of school, let's go out and celebrate tonight." I smiled and nodded in agreement, my fingernails digging deep into my palms. After we parted ways, I drove straight to my best friend's law firm. Since he'd managed to keep this from me for so long, it was time for him to experience a real surprise. The principal called him Harry's dad. Combined with his increasingly strange behavior over the past few years, I suspect he's been seeing someone else, and it's probably been going on for years. I sat in Jill's law office, my fingers tightly wrapped around the coffee cup. I recounted everything that had happened at the kindergarten gate, my voice so calm it felt unfamiliar even to me. Jill's pen snapped to a halt on the paper. The sharp instincts of a top-tier lawyer instantly hardened her expression. "Give me an hour." She turned and opened her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. This hour felt like the longest wait of my life. Watching the bustling traffic outside the window, the memories of 10 years of marriage played back in my mind like a frantic rewind, my emotions swinging wildly between heaven and hell. 50 minutes later, a preliminary investigation report appeared before me. Every single transaction of the so-called charity funds had been transferred to a personal account belonging to someone named Kate. This person wasn't the head of some charity organization, she was just an ordinary nurse at the Central Hospital. And her son, Harry, was 7 years old and had just started first grade. Everything matched up. I stared at the photo in the file, my heart skipping a beat. The woman wore a protective amulet around her neck, a red cord with a gold pendant. It was identical to the one Jack had shoved into my hands, his eyes red-rimmed, after my accident last year, insisting he'd specially obtained it from the temple for me. He said he was afraid I'd find it ugly, so he specially had someone redesign the pendant. When I received it, I was touched for days, believing it was his unique love for me. Little did I know his love was just another cheap, mass-produced item that could be easily replicated. Before long, Jill found Kate's social media account too. The profile picture was a photo of Jack with Kate and their son, the 3 of them together. The backdrop was the beach we often visited. He held the boy named Harry in his arms, while Kate nestled beside him, smiling sweeter than honey. The latest update is a photo of a Lego castle. Harry says his dad is the greatest king in the world, capable of building him the strongest castle. The photo was taken last Saturday. I remember that night when Zoe brought her building blocks to Jack, asking him to play with her. Without even looking up, he impatiently replied, "Daddy had a company team building event today and is exhausted. You play by yourself." The light in Zoe's eyes instantly dimmed. I crouched down to comfort her, explaining that Daddy worked too hard and we needed to be understanding. Little did I know his exhaustion came from building castles for other kids. I held back the trembling in my hands and kept swiping through the screen. Next up is a photo of him taking Harry to the amusement park. Sitting on the carousel, Jack gazed at Harry with a look of adoration and pride I'd never seen before. Yet whenever Zoe mentioned wanting to go to the amusement park, he'd always say the rides were too childish and boring. Scrolling through the updates, Jack cooked for Harry, read him bedtime stories, and fixed his broken toy cars. It turns out he wasn't incapable of being a good dad, he just didn't want to be Zoe's father. The fatherly love that should have been mine for my daughter, he gave it all away, without reservation, generously, to another child. If that's the case, then this father is better off without. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. When I opened them again, only coldness remained in my gaze. Jill, prepare the divorce papers for me. Property division, I want him to walk away with nothing. Also, recover all marital assets he's transferred over the years under the guise of charity. Jill's divorce agreement hadn't even been drafted yet when Jack suddenly showed up unannounced. Just after 4 p.m., her phone rang abruptly. It was him calling. Honey, I have an urgent meeting at work and can't get away. You go pick up Zoe first. His voice carried genuine regret. Sorry to put you out again. I booked Blue Mountain Western Restaurant. Meet me at 8, we'll celebrate properly. My heart skipped a beat as I gripped my phone. Blue Mountain Western Restaurant, the place of our first date. If not for the evidence staring me in the face, I'd still be touched by his thoughtfulness and care. Alright, I'll go pick up Zoe right now. To avoid raising his suspicions, I switched to Jill's car. The black sedan, with its windows tinted to the darkest shade, was perfect for tonight's hunt. When Zoe came out of kindergarten, her little face was rosy, and she excitedly held up a small red flower. Mommy, the teacher said I was the best today. I stroked her cheek, a pang of emotion welling up inside me. Then tonight, Mommy will take you out for a special treat. Where's Daddy? Daddy's busy with work. He has to go somewhere very important, but we'll see him soon. I parked across the street from the elementary school next door, turned off the engine, and waited patiently for my prey to appear. At 5:20 sharp, Jack appeared at the school gate. Standing beside him was none other than Kate. The woman looked even more delicate in person than in photographs, dressed in a light pink dress with long hair cascading smoothly over her shoulders, presenting an utterly harmless appearance. At 5:30 sharp, the dismissal bell rang. Moments later, a boy dashed out, backpack slung over his shoulder. He called out Daddy, in a clear voice, and threw himself into Jack's arms. The word Daddy rolled off his tongue with such natural intimacy. Jack crouched down to catch him, his movements so practiced they sent a chill down your spine. He took the boy's backpack and slung it over his shoulder, then bent down to lift him up. Kate, standing beside him, affectionately hooked her arm through his. The look in her eyes as she gazed up at him was filled with admiration and love. The three of them standing together created a scene so harmonious it was almost blinding. Harry chattered excitedly about school antics, while Jack listened intently, nodding occasionally in response. This patience, this tenderness, my Zoe never experienced it. They got into a white SUV, the very one Jack drove to work every day. I started my car and followed at a comfortable distance. Zoe sat quietly in the back seat, playing with a small toy in her hand, occasionally glancing out the window. Mommy, where are we going? To see Daddy. Is Daddy in that car up ahead? A child's intuition is always frighteningly sharp. I looked into her innocent eyes through the rearview mirror, barely able to hide the ache in my heart. Yes, Daddy's up ahead. The car ahead did indeed stop at the entrance of Blue Mountain West Restaurant. I parked mine diagonally across from the cafe entrance, where I could clearly see the restaurant's door. Jack got out and thoughtfully walked around to the passenger's side to open the door for Kate. This kind of treatment I'd only ever experienced when I was head over heels in love with Jack. Harry skipped and jumped his way to the dining room. Jack held Kate's hand, following right behind. The family of three, blissfully happy. Mom, where's Dad? Zoe asked, pressing her face against the car window. He's inside, I replied, gazing at the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. With someone else. Zoe didn't grasp the deeper meaning behind my words, merely watching the warm scene inside the restaurant with curiosity. I pulled out a wet wipe from my bag and carefully wiped away the sweat and crumbs from her face. Then I opened the compact mirror and applied the brightest, boldest red lipstick. This shade was the one Jack disliked most. He always said it was too flashy, unbecoming of a good wife and mother. But tonight, it was just right. I took Zoe's small hand and pushed open the glass door to the restaurant, my gaze immediately locking onto the table by the window. Jack was cutting Harry's steak, his movements gentle and meticulous. Kate sat across from me, filming with her phone while occasionally reaching over to wipe sauce from her son's mouth, a scene of pure warmth. I walked straight over. The moment Jack saw me, the color drained from his face. His knife and fork clattered onto the plate with a sharp clang. "Lena?" His voice trembled. "Why are you here? We weren't supposed to meet at 8? Kate reacted just as quickly. She immediately tucked away her phone and put on a flustered expression, her eyes instantly welling up with tears. "Jack, who is this?" I ignored them, pulled out the chair next to Jack, and sat down, cradling Zoe in my arms. "Aren't you going to introduce us, Jack?" I smiled faintly. "Celebrating your other child starting school, and you won't offer your legitimate wife a drink?" His lips began to tremble. "Lena, let me explain, this is a distant relative of mine." Before he could finish, Harry cried out in displeasure, "Dad!" The clear, sharp sound hit Jack like a slap across the face. The restaurant fell instantly silent as countless eyes turned toward them. Zoe pointed at Harry curiously and asked loudly, "Mommy, why did he call Daddy Daddy?" Diners around them glanced over, and some had already pulled out their phones to start recording. Just as I was about to speak, Kate suddenly began to tear up and launched into her performance. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear enough for several tables nearby to hear. "Miss, I know you like Jack, but we've been married for 8 years. She paused, tears falling perfectly down her cheeks. "Our son Harry is already 7 years old. Jack had promised me long ago that he'd cut all ties with other women. I never imagined you'd still come looking for him." Kate looked at me, her eyes filled with pity and resignation. "Miss, I know you've had your own struggles, but the child is still here. Could you at least spare us a shred of dignity?" Her rhetoric was exceptionally skillful. In just a few sentences, she painted me as a clingy, home-wrecking other woman. Meanwhile, she positioned herself as the wronged, pitiable rightful wife. Jack, sitting beside her, remained silent throughout. Yet his face betrayed just the right amount of awkwardness and unease, as if tacitly agreeing with Kate's explanation. Seeing this, the diners around me gave me a completely different look, and the murmurs grew louder. "TSK, TSK. These mistresses nowadays are getting more and more shameless. They're showing up with their kids in tow. What kind of move is that? Look at that woman, all that heavy makeup. She's clearly no good." Zoe couldn't understand the adults' complicated words, but children always sense malice most keenly. She clung tightly to my arm, her childish voice unusually loud. "You can't talk about my mom. My mom is Dad's wife." The boy named Harry was enraged. He leapt up from his chair, his little face flushed crimson. "That's not true. Your mom's a wicked woman. She's a fox spirit trying to steal my dad," he shouted, reaching out to shove Zoe. I instinctively reached out to shield Zoe with my arms, but Jack was quicker, grabbing my arm. "Let's talk this out calmly. Don't get worked up." In that split second he pulled me back. Harry shoved Zoe hard to the ground. Her body lost its balance, and her forehead slammed hard against the metal edge of the chair, producing a dull thud. "Wah!" A piercing cry instantly shattered the restaurant's hypocritical calm. My heart felt like it was suffocating. I mustered every ounce of strength to violently push Jack away, then rushed over to scoop up my trembling daughter. Her temple was swelling visibly before my eyes, a trail of blood seeping from the broken skin. At that moment, the last shred of affection I had for him drained away completely, along with my daughter's blood and tears. Jack rushed over too. But his first instinct was to pull the frightened Harry into his arms, patting his back soothingly. He didn't even glance at Zoe, who was bleeding from her forehead. Instead, he roared at me, "Lena! have you had enough of this? Must you make such a scene? You've scared Harry. I was holding my daughter when my temper flared up instantly. Jack, we're done. He froze for a moment before finally looking up at me and Zoe. Panic flashed in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by anger. Lena, what the hell are you talking about? I ignored him and pulled out my phone, dialing a number. In front of everyone, I said slowly, word by word, Dad, it's me. A deep male voice came from the other end, Lena? Issue the order. All project collaborations between StarTech and Jack Company are to be terminated immediately, right this instant, without exception. The restaurant fell instantly silent. The color drained from Jack's face, and his lips began to tremble. And, I continued, put their company on StarTech's blacklist. No further business. With that, I picked up Zoe and turned toward the restaurant exit. Behind me came Jack's frantic voice, Lena. Lena, come back. Let's talk this through. I didn't look back. The night breeze outside the door was chilly, but my heart felt lighter than ever before. Zoe had stopped crying in my arms and asked in her baby voice, Mommy, are we not going to have Daddy anymore? I gently kissed her forehead, my voice soft, yes, we don't need him anymore. Mommy alone can make you the happiest little treasure. Grandpa, Grandma, and I will all protect you. After leaving the restaurant, I rushed straight to the nearest central hospital with Zoe in my arms. The blood beads on her forehead had already congealed, but my heart still ached terribly. Jack's calls kept coming in, my phone vibrating wildly. I didn't even bother to look at it, I just blocked him. In the emergency room, the doctor gently cleaned Zoe's wound while asking with concern, how did such a young child sustain such injuries? I took a deep breath and stated calmly, in a tone that was casual yet loud enough for the nurses nearby to hear. Oh, I was eating in the cafeteria when a little boy shoved me and I fell. The nurse beside me immediately frowned. What kind of parents are these nowadays? They don't even keep an eye on their kids. I let out a bitter laugh, my eyes glistening with tears. Control? The child's mother was right there. Not only did she refuse to apologize, she turned it around and accused me of being the mistress harassing her husband. What? Another nurse immediately leaned in. That happened too? I nodded, my voice tinged with just the right amount of hurt. Yeah, that woman was pretty. She said she works as a nurse at your hospital. Her name is Kate. As the words fell, the emergency room fell instantly silent. Several nurses exchanged knowing glances, their eyes filled with pity and gossip as they looked at me. I had already helped her ignite the flames of public opinion. Just as we were talking, Kate rushed over as expected. Her expression changed instantly when she saw me, then she immediately switched back to that pitiful look, tears welling up in her eyes as she prepared to speak. But I didn't give her a chance to put on a show. I turned directly to the doctor and said, Doctor, please examine her thoroughly. My daughter is only 4 years old. If she suffers any lasting damage from this fall, we couldn't bear the responsibility. That child who pushed her really hit her hard. Kate's face went completely pale. The nurses around her stared at her with strange looks, their whispers growing louder. Who would have thought? Kate always seemed so honest and decent. No wonder she's been taking so many days off lately and got a new car, turns out she hooked up with a sugar daddy. That innocent little girl act? Exactly the type guys can't resist. She's got some serious game. Kate opened her mouth to explain, but no words came out. Her face turned pale, then green, as she stood there helplessly. Just then, Jack stormed in, furious. He saw me and Zoe, completely unconcerned about his daughter's injuries, and immediately snapped, Lena, did you have to make a scene for everyone to see? How is Kate supposed to work here now? Watching him disregard his own daughter while anxiously defending another woman, my heart died completely. I pulled out my phone and, right in front of him, sent Jill a message, send the agreement and all evidence to his email. The other side instantly replied with an, okay, emoji. Within seconds, Jack's phone began vibrating frantically. He pulled it out irritably, but his face drained of color the moment he saw the email subject line. "Lena, you're out of your mind," his voice trembled. Holding Zoe, I walked past him and said calmly, "Don't worry, Jack. It's only just begun." Kate, who had been listening to the others talk nearby, finally couldn't hold back her tears. She tugged at Jack's sleeve, her voice trembling with tears. "Jack, let's go. I feel awful." Jack glared at me through clenched teeth and spat out, "Fine. Don't come crying to me later." He pulled Kate up and turned to leave, leaving behind a room full of medical staff watching the spectacle. As soon as I stepped out of the hospital doors holding Zoe, my phone rang. It was my dad. "Lena, I've taken care of things with Jack." Father's voice was steady and authoritative. "All investment companies, subsidiaries, and partners under Star Technology have completely terminated their cooperation with Jingxing Technology. I've pulled some strings, and the banks have just rejected several of their key loan applications. MHM, is there anything else you need me to do?" I looked up at the pitch-black night sky, my voice calm. "Dad, I suspect last year's car accident wasn't an accident. Help me look into it." There was a 3-second silence on the other end of the line, followed by a voice straining to contain its anger. "Fine. I'll have someone come pick you up." After hanging up, I felt the weight that had been on my shoulders for a decade finally lift. Jack and Kate moved faster than I'd anticipated. The next morning, just as I was about to drop Zoe off at kindergarten, my phone exploded. Countless abusive messages flooded in. I tapped on the trending topics and found the top story: "Legacy wife bullied mistress for 8 years." A viral article with over 100,000 views is making waves, its headline jarring: "I was the other woman for 8 years, all because the wife belonged to a wealthy family." Authored by Kate. She cast herself as the tragic heroine who grew up alongside Jack. She claimed I used my family's influence to forcibly tear them apart, and that Jack married me only to protect her and their son. The accompanying images were meticulously curated. One after another, photos captured Jack and his family's warm daily moments. Harry was sweet and adorable, Kate gentle and kind, Jack's eyes brimming with adoration. And my photo? Just yesterday's shot, me looking arrogant with bright red lipstick. Beyond that, there were fabricated chat logs and doctored transfer screenshots. They directly portrayed me as a venomous woman who uses money to suppress true love and abuses innocent children. The comments section has spiraled out of control, rich girl bullying others with her privilege, destroying families. Poor kid, tormented by that vicious stepmother. Jack's such a real man, bending over backwards to protect his lover. The private messages are even more vicious. The barrage of curses directed at Zoe and me is unbearable to read. As I stared at those vicious words, I felt a momentary suffocation and chill. I had always believed that as long as I held the truth, I would fear no mudslinging. But I forgot that the torrent of public opinion never listens to reason. They wouldn't even spare an innocent 4-year-old child. Just then, the phone rang. Jack's voice came through, weary yet threatening. "Lena, making a big deal out of this won't do anyone any good. Our project has been suspended, and you've seen what your father is capable of. Public opinion is on my side now. If you drop the lawsuit, I'll have Kate delete the posts. Otherwise, no one will be spared." He thought cyberbullying could force me to back down. I laughed. After hanging up, I texted Jill, "Follow up on the car accident lead. Also, prepare to strike back. I want them ruined." Seeing that force wouldn't work, Jack resorted to emotional manipulation. He brought his mother to my parents' doorstep and staged a tearful scene. His mother knelt on the ground, sobbing, "It's all my son's fault. But the child is innocent. If Lena really divorces him, Zoe will have no father, and the other kids will bully her." Jack knelt down, sobbing, "Uncle and Aunt, I was wrong. I'm willing to cut ties with Kate. Please talk Lena into giving me one last chance." Neighbors gathered around, pointing and whispering. My dad was so furious he wanted to call security, but I stopped him. I stepped outside, activated the video recording function on my phone, aimed it at the mother and son putting on their earnest performance, and spoke slowly and deliberately, "Jack, every extra second you keep this up, your company goes bankrupt a day sooner." His crying stopped abruptly as he stared at me in disbelief. I tucked my phone away, turned, and walked through the door without looking back. That night, Jill's call sent a chill down my spine. "Lena, I found something. Brace yourself." Her voice was heavier than ever before. "The mechanic who serviced your car last year received a $500,000 wire transfer from Kate after the accident. And there's a witness, the mechanic's brother-in-law saw him tampering with your brake pads." My hand trembled as I held the phone. Kate wanted me dead. If it hadn't been for that grassy verge cushioning my fall when the brakes failed that day, I'd already be a corpse. And Jack? Did he know? Or was he involved in this murder too? Zoe was playing with toys in the living room, her innocent laughter stabbing at my heart. If I really died, how would that pair of scoundrels treat her? The thought sent my anger erupting completely. "Pack up all the evidence and send it to me." After hanging up with Jill, I unblocked Jack's number. When he answered, I cut straight to the chase. "Want something more thrilling than online novels? Meet me on the top floor of StarTech." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Lena, what exactly are you trying to do?" "I'm going to show you what real high society tactics look like." Hanging up the phone, I stared out the window at the bustling traffic. "If you want to play games, I'll play along to the very end. But this time I'll set the rules." Soon, Jack appeared at the entrance of StarTech wearing his finest suit. Watching him on the surveillance feed, I felt a mix of emotions. He adjusted his tie, strode in with his head held high and chest puffed out, a smug grin on his face. But he was stopped by the front desk after just a few steps. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" "I'm here to see Lena. She's waiting for me." "I'm sorry, we haven't received any booking information." I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor, watching the restless figure on the surveillance feed. He paced the lobby, making call after call, sweat beading on his forehead. An hour later, I finally instructed my assistant to let him in. Jack stormed into the office, fury etched across his face. "Why did you make me wait so long?" With that little patience, he still expects to negotiate terms with me? I said nothing, merely tossing the investigation report at his feet. The thick stack made a particularly loud thud upon impact. He bent down to pick it up, his face still wearing a look of disdain. "What trick are you trying to pull now?" Page 1, the mechanic shop owner's transfer records. Kate's name stands out prominently, $50,000. Page 2, witness testimony. The mechanic shop owner's brother-in-law, in black and white, states he saw someone tampering with my brake pads. Page 3, photographs showing the brake pads deliberately sabotaged, with clear evidence of snapped steel wires. Jack's face drained of color, turning deathly pale, and his hands began to tremble. This can't be." His turning of pages grew slower and slower, his scrutiny ever more intense. Until the final page, a handwritten remittance slip signed by Kate, bearing the words "accident settlement fee." The papers slipped from his hands and scattered across the floor. "No, Kate isn't like that. She's so kind, how could she do something like this?" Watching him delude himself, my stomach churned violently. "Kind? Then take another look at this." I handed him another document. It was the paternity test report for him and Harry. The conclusion stated clearly, after testing, Sample A, Jack, and Sample B, Harry, are excluded from a biological parent-child relationship. Jack slumped to the floor, muttering, "Impossible, impossible." Suddenly, he lunged forward like a madman and clutched my legs desperately. "Lena. I was wrong. I truly had no idea she'd do something like this. She deceived me. That child isn't mine after all." Tears and snot smeared his face as he frantically recalled all the good things about me. "Do you remember? When I was starting my business, you stayed up late every night helping me draft proposals. When I was sick, you never left my side. The first time we met, you said you loved how dedicated I was. We shared so many beautiful, happy moments, how could you just leave like that? Every word stabbed at my heart. He remembers now? Why didn't he remember when he was head over heels for that other woman? The 10 years I gave him, did he spare a single second thinking of me while he was cozying up to Kate? Your tears are cheaper than the steak at this restaurant. I flung his hand away and grabbed the landline. Hello, 911? I need to file a report. Jack froze, his eyes wide with disbelief. Suspects, Jack and Kate. Charges, embezzlement and attempted murder. I, Lena, am filing this formal accusation. The voice of the police officer asking for the address came through the phone. Jack completely lost it. He lunged at me again like a rabid dog, clinging desperately to my legs. Lena. Please. I'm a victim too. She deceived me for 8 years. I'm a victim too. His voice was shrill and piercing, a far cry from his usual refined demeanor. Shifting blame, turning the tables, utterly lacking in responsibility. This is the man I've loved for 10 years. I kicked him away and smoothed my skirt. Jack, what state are you in right now? Do you need me to hand you a mirror? 10 minutes later, the police knocked and entered. Jack was still kneeling on the floor, his eyes vacant, muttering something under his breath. Officer, the witness and evidence are right here. I handed him the folder, my tone calm. The clink of the handcuffs echoed sharply in the office. The instant Jack was cuffed, he suddenly looked up at me. The love in his eyes vanished completely, replaced only by resentment. Lena, you ruined me. You're a crazy woman. I laughed. Just moments ago he was crying and begging for my forgiveness, and now he's changed his tune? This is his true nature, isn't it? A wolf in sheep's clothing, utterly hypocritical. A month later, the verdict was handed down. Kate was sentenced to 10 years in prison for attempted murder. Jack received a combined sentence of 3 years for embezzlement and obstruction of justice. On the day of sentencing, I sat in the back row of the gallery, watching as the bailiffs led them away in handcuffs. Kate looked ashen, while Jack glared at me with venom until he disappeared behind the door. My heart suddenly felt empty at that moment. Not because I was reluctant to let go, but because I had finally cleared out all the clutter. 3 years later, at the launch event for StarTech's new product. Dressed in a sharp white suit, I stood confidently on stage before hundreds of media representatives and investors. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, good afternoon. Welcome to the StarTech AI Smart Home Global Launch event. Over these past 3 years, I've turned myself into an unstoppable machine, leading my team through countless technical challenges. Every waking moment outside of spending time with Zoe was consumed by work. The launch event was an unprecedented success, met with thunderous applause. I've finally become the person I always wanted to be, strong, independent, no longer anyone's appendage. After the press conference ended, I walked alone toward the parking lot. Just then, a familiar figure came into view. Jack. He'd lost too much weight, his hair was streaked with gray, and he wore an ill-fitting, cheap suit. 3 years behind bars had smoothed away all his sharp edges. He saw me, and a complex mix of emotions flashed in his eyes, regret, inferiority, and that touch of ridiculous admiration. Lena, his voice was hoarse, I was wrong. I stopped in my tracks, studying the unfamiliar man before me. Once a competent project manager, now a homeless drifter on the street. Can we ever go back to the way things were? I froze for a moment, then laughed until tears welled up in my eyes. Which past are we talking about? I looked at him and asked softly, back to when I had to terminate your 6th child? Or back to when you let Kate fabricate our unhappy marriage and cyberbully me and our daughter? Or perhaps back to when you stood by and watched her plot to kill me on the highway? The blood drained from his face in an instant. I pulled a bank card from my bag and handed it to him. The supplementary card you gave me back then, I never spent a single cent. There's 50,000 yuan in this account. It's not for you. It's severance pay for buying out 10 years of my foolishness. His hands trembled as if he dared not take it. Take it. My voice was cold, utterly devoid of warmth. This is the last money you'll ever get from me. Thank you for showing me how cheap you are, and for helping me discover my true worth. After saying that, I didn't wait for his response. I walked around him and headed toward my car. Inside, 7-year-old Zoe was waving at me from her car seat, beaming like a little sun. Mommy. Sweetie, we're going home. I started the car and saw Jack still standing there in the rearview mirror. He was holding that card, his whole body shaking. Finally, he sank to the ground as if all his strength had been drained. My car carried me and my future toward the bright lights ahead. I didn't look back, and I never would.